What's up, guys? It's your host Spartanic Arts DxD back with another high school DxD related video, and today we have What If Issei Was Abandoned, the finale, aka part 23. If you're in the premiere right now, let's hit the 1,000 likes for the finale. Okay, it's absolutely amazing. This episode will probably be coming out the 17th of August, so it'll be ready to go because I am recording it currently on the 16th. So if you join Balance Breaker, I do apologize. Speaking of joining Balance Breaker, thank you so much for the support and everybody joining Balance Breaker and Limit Breaker. As I said, 60 members, crazy, 30k, crazy. Things are just getting crazy. If you're in the premiere, let's try to hit the like button. Hit the like button right now, man. And what if Issei had Ultra Instinct, and what if Goku was in High School DxD? Will be releasing very, very soon. That one, they're going to be like in correlation or in sync probably, so like Ultra Instinct first, the movie as I promised, and which is the 30k special. Then the next movie, Goku and DxD, will be like a little, maybe 5 days after, to keep it in sync so people they want something a little bit new. So I understand, but I have to also do the voted polls. So without further ado, let's go ahead and subscribe to my second channel, Zapopowski, and following DxD down the description below. And without further intrusion, let's go ahead and thank my Balance Breakers: Rob the King, Lachlan Yates, Atomic Warlord 58, Seth Voiles, Aunt Lewis, The Beast YT3, Colex Joe Baldwin, Russell Ketchell Jr., Madara Uchiha, Refik 135, Keep Saying 21, Blue Lightning, Simnar Q, Xdatapat Gaming, VR with hashtag 2347, Sanitate, Steven Cruz, ZK2000, The J-Boys, The PS Gamer, XOR X108, Mr. Wolf, Jordan Patchow, Mazaku, Dr. MLG underscore is the bomb, Asamotus, Grimfire Shot Gamer, That Round Guy, Zero Fusion, Soresponder, NickMe98, God Said Why, and Chaotic Raven. Thank you so much for becoming a Balance Breaker. And without any further delay, let's go ahead and get into the finale. Right at the end of chapter 10, basically, and here we go. Scene change a couple of days later, Mount Kalash. After the little talk with Shiva, Issei became more open to the ones inside this mountain. He also kept spending a lot of time with Yae. That explained him about alchemy and some other topics he didn't quite understand. What was weird was that she would sometimes have extremely red face when talking to him. She even stuttered sometimes, but he felt that it wasn't anything bad, so he let it slide. Erika and Fuki were in the same sense. When he wasn't inside the library, he was with one of these two. Erika walked closer to him, and when they were eating, training, or just talking, she would grasp his hand and subconsciously, and after making eye contact, she would quickly release him, act as if nothing happened. Quite cute in his eyes. He was happy that Erika was trying to be closer to him. Yae also talked to Erika a lot, maybe because she was the last of her race as well. Even Erika had to admit that she was fond of Yae, either because of her extremely positive personality or the reactions at her teasing. Fuki, however, was a bit more direct towards him. When alone, she would hug his entire arm and sometimes even smile foolishly, as if lost in thought. Her smile made Issei happy. She seemed to be really glad to be able to do this with him. Also, something weird was how every time Fuki saw Yae, both of them would stare at each other's eyes as if having a fight. At times, sparks could be seen coming out of their eyes. Even Yae would have a tick on her brow, even every time Fuki pressed his arms on her breast. But he believed that aside from that, they were extremely on good terms with one another. He hoped. Also, due to his constant teasing and talks in particular, Yae and him grew extremely close. At the times when he would do something bad, at least that was what Yae said, she would try to reapproach him. When that failed, she would scold him, and as a last resort, she even made a paper fan to correct him. If that didn't work, she would just give up and sigh. Clearly, they were extremely close to one another after spending most of their time inside Mount Kalash. Yae was happy about making her first real friends in her life, and Issei was happy that she was acting more comfortable around them. Right now, they were at the training field. Issei called everyone here. Apparently, he had something important to say to them. Shiva and Pravarti were side to side. Shiva had an emotionless look in his eyes, and Pravarti had a brilliant smile that she tried to cover with her hand. Erika and Fuki were on the complete opposite side of them. Erika had her arms crossed and a boring, adorned look on her eyes. Fuki was confused about why Issei was calling them there. But since it was one who asked him, she didn't have any problem. She actually had a brilliant smile on her face. Creak! The humongous door of this palace was opened. From it, two figures could be seen, walking side by side. Issei had an expressionless look written all over his face, but his eyes held a light full of expectation. Yae was walking at his side, her normal clothes dotted on her. She was smiling like she normally did, but something on that smile was different. Bavardi instantaneously noticed that change and tried to hide her giggle even more. Whew, seems she did change during these days, she thought. Shiva looked at his wife and tilted his head. He was a bit confused by her smile, but since he knew her like the back of his palm, he knew that she was just messing around with something, or was just happy at something. As they reached closer, Yae and Issei separated themselves. Issei went with his team and Yae to her parents. The moment Issei stood near Fuki, she basically launched herself towards his arm, hugging it in between the valley of her breast. Issei was accustomed to this, so he just dealt with it. Erika, on the other hand, had a bit of jealous look in her red eyes. So as a response, she walked closer to Issei, standing next to his other arm and crossing her own arms against her chest, causing Issei to glance for a brief second. Fuki closed her eyes and rubbed her cheek on Issei's arm. So warm were her thoughts. The moment Yae saw her like that, a twitching eyebrow and dangerous glare was on her face and eyes. This fox. Why is she so close to Issei-san? Rubbing her cheek on him like that. She should stay away from him. 5 meters. No, 50 meters should be enough. Her thoughts were a bit dangerous. Even a pale pink aura flowed out of her body. Fuki sensed the slight killing intent, so she opened her eyes. The moment they landed on Yae, she smirked. Ha! She was mocking her, of course. Yae felt a vein pop out of her forehead. She clenched her fist harder than before. This problematic woman, she's mocking me! Fuki's smirk increased in size. She's definitely mocking me. Do you think she can mock Yae that easily? I won't let you get off easily. Do you hear? Do you hear? She screamed inside her head. Fuki giggled mischievously. Issei then decided to rip his arm out of Fuki's embrace since he saw the glares between each other. Fuki only moved her hand around cutely and looked at him, a pout on her lips and a cute expression on her face. She felt the eyes of someone on her. She was right. Yae looked at her. The two made eye contact until Yae mocked back. Ha! She covered her mouth with a hand and broke the eye contact. This caused Fuki to have a tick on her eyebrow. She knew that she was provoking her. Fuki was pissed, but her words were stopped at her throat by Issei's voice. Sorry to call all of you here so unexpectedly, but I believe it's time we should go. We spent more than a week here, and I wouldn't like to intrude further and take advantage of your hospitality even more. His voice was warm and sharp, but all noticed that he was gentle as he could. His declaration made Yae widen her eyes in absolute shock. Her ears limped down, and her face sadness could be felt from her. Even her eyes held unwillingness. Issei-san, she only thought of him, and all of the moments they spent together. She obviously didn't want him to leave. Shiva and Bavardi knew that he was planning something, so they were both silent. Erika saw the glint in Issei's eyes and held her words. Fuki was happy with whatever decision he made. But, he mouthed with a gleam in his eyes, I would want to ask you something. His eyes locked on Yae, his eyes never leaving her. Yae felt a heartbeat quicken when she saw those eyes. She even had a red tint on her cheeks, something that was seen by all. Yae, you are someone that I would like to know more, he began his speech. Erika and Fuki instantly knew what he wanted to do. Erika had an intrigued look in her eyes, while Fuki held shock in her own eyes. You're fun to be around, positive, creative, and courageous, he smirked, causing her to blush deepen. In the short time I have spent with you, I discovered that although you have been through much, you still stand tall. You're prideful at what you are, but not arrogant. You're gentle, kind, and knowledgeable in all aspects, he continued his talk. Shiva was sighing at this. He knew what was going to happen. Bavardi was at his side, hugging his arm. Her smile was extremely warm and comforting. That's why I would like to ask, he paused. Would you, Yae Rudra, like to be a part of my team and accompany all of us in all of our adventures? Would you like to be a part of my team in the raiding games? And would you like to spend more of our time together? His words could be quickly misinterpreted, but it wasn't his intention. He just wanted to get to know each other better and become closer friends. But for Yae and every other woman here, it was a different story. In their minds, it seemed like Issei just confessed. Erika sighed, and she knew that he didn't mean it like that, but he knew he was just too good for another woman not to notice him. She managed to control her jealousy and started to think with a clear head. Right now, Fuki was a handful, but she felt that Yae could be a good chain to restrict Fuki with. Maybe she could profit from all this, you know? Like letting two sides fight each other and then come to reap the benefits. Thinking like this, all of her negative thoughts went out the window. She could definitely take advantage of this. She hid this seductive smile that was aimed at Issei and tried her best not to show how she actually felt. Fuki was different from her. She just stunned at his words. Her eyes widened and her mind was empty. She stood there unmoving, trying to process what he just said. Ye had a blush all the way to her ears. Her heartbeat was extremely quick and her mind was a mess. Together like a couple? Her thoughts stopped as she felt vapor coming out of her ears. Issei was watching all of this with some confusion. He saw that Erika was comfortable with all of this, but he could feel her motives were more selfish than what seemed to the eye. Fuki was frozen solid, as if she just witnessed something ridiculous. Issei thought that her brain was rebooting, and Ye was a blushing mess. She couldn't think straight, and she just kept mumbling something about dangerous with a too happy of a smile on her face. After the initial shock passed, Ye breathed in and out and calmed herself down. She closed her eyes and began thinking, this time logically. She really wanted to agree, but she could never leave her family like that, could she? But her heart was definitely telling her to go. Such a mess, she thought. But then Shiva talked. We agreed to this. His voice was serious and caused Ye to turn her whole body around. He told us before, Pavarti replied. Well, something like that, she thought. Ye was shocked at this. Did Issei-san ask my parents' permission since he knew that I wouldn't leave them by myself? By themselves? Her heart felt a sweet feeling. He was definitely considering her feelings in the matter. Her smile became even gentler and her eyes were misty. This definitely struck her heart deeply. She looked at Issei and gave him the sweetest smile. It momentarily caused him to freeze. Such beauty. He felt as if he won the lottery when he saw that smile. Many other men would have fallen at her smile, her eyes. And just her presence alone even felt memorized at the sight, but he stood strong. Issei-san, she muttered. Yes, I'll gladly be a part of your team and spend even more time with you. She agreed to his proposal, a light full of determination and something else inside her eyes. Issei felt shocked by this, but also extremely happy. This was definitely amazing for him, so lucky. Maybe Lady Luck hadn't abandoned him after all. Congratulations, partner. The last moon rabbit and the daughter of Shiva. Your team is definitely filled with abnormalities. Drake told him while feeling happy about this. Issei didn't reply. He just smiled sincerely. Drake knew that he was grateful at his comment. Then welcome to the team, Ye Rudra. He extended his hand towards her. She, of course, took it without wasting a single second. Yes, she nodded her head in happiness. But at that moment, Fuki woke up from her stupor. Wait a moment, she yelled while walking closer to them. We don't know if she is strong enough to be a member of our team. You know what class of enemies are after us, Issei, she told Issei. Her words were logical. After all, none of them had seen her fight since the first meeting. She would mainly pass her time talking with Issei and Erika, having unknown competitions with Fuki that would randomly just start with a glare, or she would be at the library also helping Issei. But Issei didn't doubt her capabilities. She was Shiva's daughter and the last of a race whose bread and butter was fighting, so by no means was she weak. However, the rest of the team might think differently. They didn't know about her background, only a small part of it, and that was the basis of her race. His team was no dictatorship, so if someone had a problem, then it would be solved by asking the opinion of all present. But right now, he believed that to prove something like this, there was only one way. Those eyes were admitting wariness, and it was obvious, at least for her, to notice that Fuki was extremely worried about the future possibilities between them. So at this thought, Ye and Fuki looked into each other's eyes, sparks coming off them. The atmosphere was heavy, and no one said anything. Issei knew what they wanted to do, and this could possibly be the best possible solution. After all, they could respect each other by learning how strong they were, and also understand each other through a fight, just like the first time Erika and him met. Maybe this time, it would be for the better, Issei muttered under his breath. Erika was at his side, her head tilted in confusion. Shiva and Parvati were also in agreement to this. Shiva because he believed in his daughter, and Parvati because she knew that this was Ye's first real test. Oh. So you think like that, Fuki-san, Ye said, her voice sharp, clearly unhappy about this. Yes, Ye. I wouldn't like for the princess to be a burden for the team, especially with all the enemies we have. Her smile was sharp, and in no way did she back down from the challenge. Ooh, so enemies, huh? Well, I would definitely not back down at all during a fight, especially if Issei's the one who asked for my help. She hit a sore spot. Fuki had a twitching brow. I doubt it, princess. He knows what I'm capable of, and he barely knows you, so I really doubt he would ask for your help, she smirked. Ye's ears twitched and stood erect. She had her eyes closed while smiling and was emitting a heavy aura. At the moment, Issei could swear her hair changed color. Well, I could not only help during a fight, but in other things as well. After all, he asked for my help and guidance during these days, something you lack, she mocked right back at her. Maybe, but I can also help in many other aspects as well. My power is not raw strength alone, she smiled. Besides, her smirk increased. Her eyes changed to those of seductiveness. Her whole appearance increased in sensuality and beauty. If he wants me, at any moment, at any time, no matter what, no matter where, I'm willing to give myself to him. Her voice was as sweet as the devil. I'll do everything he wants. No questions asked. I'd be more than happy. She placed her hands under her breast, highlighting them even more than before. Fuki licked her lips and moved seductively on her spot, giving off a smile admitting the unknown charm. This took everyone by surprise. Never would they have ever thought she would be so shameless. Ye was speechless. Soon her face changed from white to red from embarrassment. She clearly understood what Fuki was talking about. Her face as red as it could get, and her body was trembling due to the shame and anger. Shameless, she was tongue-tied. She couldn't reply at all. Fuki shrugged her shoulders and smiled even more, clearly happy about the result. Her action caused Ye to be pissed even more, and after some time she exploded. She didn't even hold back. Outrageous! Yes, that's right. It's downright outrageous, Ye said. To actually cause the moon rabbit, innocent, honest, upright, romantic, and also the symbol of sacrifice that has been sung and praised, to be angered to such an extent. Her words sounded fair, but she was still blushing. Romantic? You? Ha! Fuki mocked. You can't even look straight at him without blushing and stuttering like a virgin girl, much less trying to act romantic, she said. Both of them walked closer to each other. Sparks could be seen coming off their eyes. An invisible aura was coming off them, clashing constantly. Each step was heavier than the last. Even the atmosphere was different. Soon they stood right in front of each other, looking into each other's eyes. Fuki had her arms crossed underneath her chest, and Ye was looking at her furiously. Her eyes on top of her head were twitching continuously. Her ears on top of her head, my bad. The height disparity was obvious for the team. Fuki was half a head taller than Ye, but Ye didn't back down at all. Seeing the atmosphere kept increasing in heaviness and decrease in temperature, Issei decided to intervene. Enough, he acted. He hit Fuki on top of the head, causing a huge bump to appear on her head. Ah, she screamed, but she didn't forget to do it sensually. Issei, why'd you do this? There's no way that's how you treat your lover, she replied, while crouching and rubbing her head. He ignored her words, but inside his heart, that scream caused him to tremble a bit. He then went and grabbed something. And used his strength to pull on Ye's rabbit ears. What's the meaning of this? He said with a strong voice. Stop acting like children. If you want to fight, just fight. No need for this pointless rambling. Ooh, sorry. Is that reason for you to be angry? Ye said, surprised that he wasn't angry at the fight, rather wishing it for it to start. Issei, as a response, kept pulling Ye's ear with a romantic strong force to get his point across, clearly unhappy. Hurts. It really is painful, Issei-san, she said while moving around. At the sides, Shiva was confused and a bit amazed by the sight. They really are a bunch of problematic children, he thought. After the little incident, those two were freed from Issei's grasp. However, everyone here agreed to avoid a possible future fight. They should still fight, that way they should get it out of their systems. So after deciding how to actually fight this through, Issei asked them to follow him. After spending a few minutes walking, they reached an empty plain, filled with only dirt and rocks at the sides. Afterwards, Issei asked Fuki and Ye to stand some distance away from each other. He, on the other hand, was in the middle of the two of them, Ye on his left and Fuki towards the right. Alright, this duel is simple. The first to lose consciousness or gives up loses, he said while looking at his sides. His eyes were sharp and serious. No killing moves are allowed, and if I or anyone else present feels that the battle has gone too far, we will stop it, he stated simple rules. Understood? He asked both of them. His voice was serious as he could make it. They nodded their heads at the same time. Their eyes never went away from each other. Ye was on guard, her center of gravity low, ready to pounce on her enemy. Fuki was still standing straight, a foot in front of her, clearly a defensive position. If so, then begin, he signaled as the referee jumped a huge distance back, right towards Erica and the rest. At that moment, hell broke loose. Boom! The clash of the both of them created a huge fissure on the ground. Ye, in a flash of sparks, reappeared in front of Fuki, and her right fist was pressing itself against Fuki's left forearm. Fuki was surprised by the sudden increase in speed. She narrowed her eyes and decided to take this seriously. Her speed is absurd, and that power and really close to Issei's, Fuki analyzed while taking a step back, taking distance. She stared at Yae, moving her left arm in the meantime to get rid of the numbness. Issei at his side was a bit surprised. Fuki reinforced her physical defense with Toki and enhanced it even further with Senjutsu. He saw a white glow on her arm and hexagon spinning around her wrist, and even with that, she's still at a disadvantage. Issei narrowed his eyes. He then looked at Yae. No additional help, that was raw strength alone. He didn't sense any kind of magical energy coming off Yae. "Not exactly correct, partner," he heard Drake's voice. "What do you mean?" he asked back. "The moon rabbit used the entire strength of her legs to increase her speed. The momentum she generated should have been ridiculous. So it's not that she's strong with her arms, rather her legs are what you should be worried about. I'm pretty sure a point-blank hit from one of her kicks would make you lose a limb. Right now, she's just testing the waters." Issei was a bit amazed by the words of his partner. So it's like that, he kept thinking. At the same moment, Yae decided to attack once again. She disappeared in a flash of lightning. Fuki at the same time made her own move. Behind her, a huge hexagon appeared. The energy admitted was substantial. One couldn't ignore it at all. Its red color indicated it had affinity with fire. Yae reappeared right in front of her, and her right leg was cocked back, ready to kick. Boom! She unleashed the kick. The speed and power of the kick created an aftershock that sent a gale in all directions. The friction between her leg and the air was clearly visible for all to see. Even the small embers could be spotted around the tip of her foot. The increase in air pressure caused Yae's kick made that water instantly condense and evaporate, creating friction and emitting heat. The kick just broke multiple sound barriers. Issei deduced and amazed by the sight. At the moment the horizontal kick landed on Fuki's chest, whoosh, but nothing happened. Her body vanished into mist. Afterimage? No. Illusion! It's Yojutsu, Yae thought, while turning her head back around. Fuki was behind her. An Ami Nami talisman was in her hand. The paper was white with red lines, a normal talisman. "Burning heavens," Fuki said, while throwing the talisman at close distance. At the same time moment, the hexagon behind her lit up and released the red light. The talisman broke into pieces and huge waves of crimson-colored flames appeared on its place. The range covered everything in her sight. Damn! Yae knew that she couldn't dodge that, so she prepared herself for the impact. Boom! The argumented talisman was strong enough to char everything on its surroundings black. Fuki, however, knew this barely did a thing, so while stepping back, she clapped both of her hands loudly. 5 Senjutsu hexagons appeared behind her back and around her wrist. The hexagons revolved constantly. Their golden light illuminated everything in sight. Her body was surrounded by a thick white mantle of Toki. She was preparing something rather big. "The radiance of my hand is the logos that pierce through darkness. Fill that direction, crush all existence and become a cadence." Her voice was sweet. Unshakable thunder. The gold hexagons released a mayhem of lightning bolts, all of them striking towards Yae. Boom, boom, boom. The rumbling of thunder echoed, and toward energy all ridiculously high. Fuki dismissed the mantle of Toki and fixed her stance. Her back straight and her eyes looking a huge mushroom-shaped cloud at the distance. At that moment, the cloud decreased in size. A scream was heard. Ha! The rest of the dust then disappeared and something could be seen. Yae was standing at the center of the crater that was sizzling with electricity and heat. The combined attack of fire and lightning created superheated plasma, further escalating the damage, so she survived it with only those wounds, Fuki thought while seeing the torn clothing of the moon rabbit. Even when I potentially increased the damage and created a huge sphere of superheated plasma, she only received that much damage. Fuki was kind of worried about this. At the same time, an increase in heat and energy was felt, and alongside a strong gale and like a hurricane, the surrounding air was heated to extreme by increased thermal energies. The change shocked everyone. The midnight blue from Yae's hair was replaced by all light red. However, not only that happened, her energy, it's 2 or 3 times that of the past. Issei, being a dragon, could sense the aura much easily. Fuki narrowed her eyes. She noticed the difference thanks to her sage arts. A sharp screech that sounded like a ripping off the atmosphere itself was released, and the boom of the explosion, similar to thunder, had filled the air with a long spear that sparked and shimmered like lightning was now held in her right hand. As the spear materialized, all sensed that the spear was everything but normal. The gold color in the tri-pronged head was emitting a sizzling sound, and the metallic luster it had was binding them. Yae cleaned the blood out of the corner of her mouth and slightly fixed her torn clothing. She ignored the aching in her body and prepared herself. "Now let's fight seriously." She crouched down and looked at the beast, ready to pounce towards her prey. Cracked. The ground gave in and Yae sprinted towards Fuki. spearhead in front of her. In less than a tenth of a second, she reached her target. Her spear was pointed at the center of her body, and a golden electrical current circled around the spear. Fuki responded as well, but since she didn't have enough time to prepare something, she couldn't do much. A hexagon appeared at the point of the impact, the corners of which had different lights to support it. Rip! The defense was torn to bits, and might of the spear reached her body. Boom! Fuki was sent flying at a speed barely perceptible with the naked eye. Smash! She crashed against some hill-sized rock and created a crater on the ground behind it. Issei felt that spear was something special, so while turning his head around and looked at Shiva and asked, "That spear, what is it?" He was confused. Shiva turned his head slightly and lifted an eyebrow with interest. He decided to answer. "That's something I gave her," he answered while crossing his arms. "It's a replica, of course, but it was made by Brahma himself." His words shocked Issei a bit. "A weapon of a god?" he asked. "More or less. It's actually a combination of weapons," Shiva confessed. "That shaft and power is made to replicate Indra's own spear, but its might is not even half," he said while closing his eyes. "And the head is made after my Trinsula, capable of breaking any kind of defense, but not close enough to my own weapon," he sighed. Issei widened his eyes at this. That spear was something given to her by the god of destruction, and based on his own weapon and Indra's, this was something quite rare. No wonder it torn Fuki's defense like paper, he concluded. At the same time, an explosion was heard from the crater. Boom! From within it, Fuki jumped and landed on the ground. Her clothes were torn, and her chest had a sizable wound, and although it didn't manage to reach her organs, it was still quite deep. "That spear, if I take another hit, it's game over," she concluded, while covering her chest and using Toki and Senjutsu to heal herself. Yae saw that the blow from her own spear didn't cause too much damage. She was a bit shocked. She actually planned to use the spear to land a heavy blow and then end it with her lightning. Never would she expect it to end like this. Not giving up, she summoned another piece of equipment, a metallic device that was hard to explain, but the power it emitted was only second to that of the spear. A Varja, Fuki noticed, an oddly shaped artifact. Then she covered her left hand with Toki and Senjutsu. A hexagon appeared on top of it. It was small inside, and many analytical designs and taijutsu symbol at the center indicated that this was vastly different from the rest. Yae pointed the tip of her Varja at Fuki. Suddenly, it released a huge lightning bolt the size of a tree trunk. Fuki did the same. She pointed her left hand and released the spell. "Trickster Fire Spirit!" she yelled. From her palm, a huge fire was seen. The shape of it had the laminating spirit and color that was eerie pale red. Boom! The clash between the fire and lightning shook the earth. Even the ones in the distance went further away. Fuki was blinded by the light from the clash. She closed her eyes. Yae used this gap and sped towards her, creating a long trail of destroyed earth. Fuki opened her eyes and saw Yae closing the distance between them. She decided to change tactics, surrounding herself with the thickest layer of Toki she could use. She smacked a pair of talismans on both of her hands while yelling, "Armor 10, Karmic Close!" Her Toki seemingly changed into solid state, giving her a pair of pseudo gauntlets to further increase her defense. Then she landed another talismans on her arm. Diamond Immortal Physique. Her body was surrounded by a light similar to that of a shining diamond, further reinforcing her defense. Shiva opened his eyes when he saw this. He was a bit impressed by the talent of the yokai. She increased her physical defense by using Omonobu Arts. She covered her weak substantially with those spells. Colored him impressed. Yae moved. She struck her body close to the ground and released a kick. The kick heated the air near Fuki. It was an extremely beautiful attack that was aimed diagonally at her chest, more towards the wound on it. Fuki moved her arms lower and towards the center of her body, mentally preparing for the impact. Then the kick struck. Bam! Fuki felt her consciousness fade momentarily. The blow managed to send her flying across the ground while creating a huge fissure across Earth. The strength behind that attack made Issei widen his eyes, and Erika widened hers as well. Fuki was still flying across the plane. After composing herself, she began turning her body, trying to reduce the momentum she had. Stabbing both of her legs on the ground, she continued her flight. A Neu ravine was made due to this. After finally stopping, a cloud of smoke covered her surroundings. The battlefield was left in ruins just from that kick alone. After the dust was gone, Fuki's figure was revealed. However, her arms were still on, defending position. This shocked Yae to no ends. How is she still blocking? That kick was all of my strength. Yae felt that Fuki was an astounding rival. Fuki, however, was different. "I can't move my arms." She noticed all of the sense of touch was gone from her arms. They just were frozen solid. Did she just break both my arms? Even when I used all of my Toki and used my best defensive spells? Fuki was shocked. After some seconds, she regained the sense of touch in her fingers, opening and closing them continuously. Okay, They are pretty battered, but fortunately nothing is too broken. Maybe some cracks in my bones, but that's it. She was happy about this. At least her defense did something. However, her momentarily sense of relief caused a gap. Yae could barely move her arms, so while focusing, she decided to work on something. On the tips of her fingers of her right hand, small hexagons not bigger than a coin were present. They were different in colors and all releasing minuscule particles. On the other hand, 5 talismans were present, all ready to be used. She threw them in the air and they floated in front of her. Soon they consumed in flames and pentagrams shining with bright/white-blue light covered all over in front of her. As the lightning reached her, she said, "Camp Turtle Shield, Evil Suppression." She moved her left hand in front of her. Boom, boom, boom. Consecutive lightning bolts struck the shield, quickly reducing its light. Fuki felt the damage and her arms increase. Clearly, they were even more broken than before. However, at the same time, she moved her right hand and screamed, "9 suns revolving law." On Yae's surroundings, 9 hexagons suddenly appeared, all different in color. Their size was bigger than a person, and power they released was second to none. Damn! Yae kept spamming lightning bolts towards Fuki and wishing to shatter her defense. Little by little, she was doing it, but Fuki's spell reached her first. From within the hexagon's thick, different colored lasers were shot all over towards her. The 9 brilliant flashes of light that were similar to the sun reached her almost immediately. Yae saw this and left off offensive side, her body and light red aura all over it, the same as her ears and hair. Boom! The entire field quaked from the force of the impact. That spell was on a different level entirely. The heat and power was astounding, clearly a blow in for a kill. The entire field was into a hot smoking fragment from the sun. The heat was so high in that part of the surroundings, crystallized rocks that became distant metalled. And the rocks at the distance melted. Even the spectators needed to use some form of defense to withstand just after the aftershock. Issei used his darkness and covered himself and Erika, creating something similar to a wall. Erika decided to help, and her shadow surrounded both of them. From it, spikes that were many as the stars and sky as dark as abyss came out, trying to reduce the aftershock before it reached the main line of defense. Shiva crossed his arms and surrounded himself with an odd grayish aura. That was the divinity of the god of destruction. Perverta focused her own divinity and created a wall in shape of rhombus. Issei wanted to stop the duel before the spell activated, but he was not fast enough. "Shit, Fuki, you crazy fox," he thought. Whoosh, the aftershock reached them, but their defenses withstood it. After the moment the explosion stopped, something could be seen. From the crater, a single silhouette diminished. The ground underneath her was untouched, creating a small earth pillar, but surroundings could only be described as hell of a fire and flames. She was covered by gold armor with a stylish design, and a huge divinity could be seen from it. It was gold and red tinge of covered by a whole armor, protecting her from any kind of harm. "Oh sun, become armor," Yae yelled, while the light of the gold armor increased in density, extinguished the flames in the surroundings. Issei looked at the armor and realized something. That! Could it be? For the first time since talking to Shiva that night, he was amazed. The gold armor covered Yae's whole body, and not a single gap could be seen. Only her head was free from the helmet, but her cheekbones had something gold planting. A huge red ring was behind her, seemingly attached to her back. Her pauldrons covered the sides of her face, and she had a pair of oversized gauntlets on both arms. It seemed to be a double layer of armor on that part. Her legs were clad in high-heeled gold boots with red soles. All in all, an armor that was extremely pleasing to the eye, but the amount of energy divinity they felt from it was a bit scared. Issei turned his head and looked at Shiva, ready to ask, but he was stopped by him. Shiva only extended a hand and nodded his head. Issei widened his eyes as he had unsaid answer. Erika at his side. "Issei, what's that armor? It has such power and from the distance." She was startled a bit. However, before he could say anything, Yae answered her question. While looking at the exhausted Fuki, who was sweating bullets, she yelled, "This is the armor of my blood father once had. This is the armor of the son of the sun god. The armor that was said to grant invulnerability," Yae said while smirking, but she thought differently. "The fox forced me to use my armor? That's amazing!" She held respect, but I can't use it for long. It's too taxing on my body, and I still can't control it properly. She was also serious. If I hadn't summoned the armor on that time, then that would have been the end of the match. I would have ended in the bed for at least a week and before I could heal properly. As the aura of the armor began to decrease, she decided her next course of action. Ha! Fuki was breathing heavily. That attack took a huge toll on her reserves. Her figure was disfigured and fatigue was visible in her eyes. She's acting tough, Fuki deduced, as she sensed her enemy's life force with her sage arts. That blow did some bad damage to her, but she's still hiding it well. She was proud of what she accomplished. I cannot fight much longer. Her wound on her chest was still not healed and her reserves were close to being empty. She's strong, I'll give her that. Quite something amazing, as a matter of fact, but I won't let her be near my Issei. The light in her eyes returned. This time she was prepared. Ye then looked at his sides. Towards his spectator's seat, she saw Issei, her father, her mother, and Erika all ready to intervene. I won't give up. Her aura flared, surrounded her armor, and after that, red aura started to gather in front of Ye. Just placed both of her hands in front. The palms were open, and energy was condensing in a shape of a circle with a medium. As the aura was compressed, Ye smirked. On the other hand, her opponent, as well as the spectators, felt the density of the sphere energy and were amazed, some more than others. Shima and Parvati had smiles on their faces, both full of pride and satisfaction. Issei and Erika prepared to move another part of the field. To be honest, the sphere of red energy and heat gave him goosebumps. Fuki knew that the sphere was really bad for her, so she gathered her remaining energy. She prepared another Omo talisman. Ye looked at Fuki with a steel-like determination, then said, "O Barhama, cover the earth." The sphere exploded into a thin laser beam that was no thicker than a branch, but its speed it had was astounding. Fuki activated her talisman and said, "Soaring heavenly legs." The talisman melted into her legs and gifted a brilliant white light. The laser traversed and went after the spectators. Issei and Erika moved to the side with all of their speed. Issei covered his body in darkness and pulled Erika towards him, successfully dodging the beam. As they did, a huge explosion occurred behind them. Boom! They turned around and saw the land between them covered by a huge explosion that reached the ceiling of the field. "Damn," Erika said, while looking at the destruction. "I bet her destructive power is even above mine," Issei thought, while looking at the distance. Dreg didn't say anything, but he secretly agreed with his partner. Back to the battlefield, Ye tried to move the beam towards Fuki, but she couldn't do much. Her internal wounds were heavy, and that attack caused even more exhaustion and stress on her body. She was unable to continue her plan, so the beam disappeared. Her breath was heavy, and her face was a bit pale. The armor she had was almost becoming a bit dimmer, as she would vanish any second. The ground cracked and Fuki was sent flying towards Ye, and thanks to the power of her legs, Ye saw this and stealing her breath, she concentrated the armor of or solidified it once again. She lifted her arms up in an X while covering her head. At the same moment, Fuki appeared above her, and her body did a full front flip and her legs struck her armored arms. Clang! The sound of metal getting struck echoed all over the field. It was similar to that of a bell. The floor underneath Ye dented, and the pillar of the safe land she was standing on broke. Boom! Ye was sent flying like a cannonball towards the bottom of the crater. Fuki created a senjutsu circle underneath her platform and kneeled on it. That should have done something. The light in her eyes have never vanished. Ye, on the other hand, coughed up a bit of blood. That blow was perfectly timed just before the armor was fully formed. While opening her eyes, she glared at Fuki. A bit of respect in those eyes. The arm was slowly vanishing, and the fatigue began hitting her. However, she didn't give up. She summoned her Varja on her left and pointed at Fuki. Fuki was surprised by the quick counter, so she could only use the circle beneath her as cover. Soon the lightning struck. Boom! A cloud of lightning formed in the place of Fuki, causing the damage of lightning bolt to increase. A figure was sent flying from within that cloud. She was sent flying quite the distance away while her body smashed onto the ground. Ye's army dissipated, turning only golden mist that was taken by the wind. Ye felt that her body was heavy as lead. She coughed up some more blood with some trouble, stood up. Her body was a mess. Her right arm, that took the end of the last kick, had scratches and bruises all over it. It appeared to be broken quite badly. A long cut was on the same shoulder, almost reaching her bone. Some blood flowed down her shoulder to the tips, and her fingers painted all over the floor in red. Her face was covered in dirt, and the blood was some scratches and few burns. Her ears were like normal, except they were sullied with blood. The clothes on her chest and abdomen were turned into tatters. Showing her curves, bruises could be seen from gaps of her clothes, and some parts of them were stained with blood. Using her left arm, she grabbed her right, began walking up the crater. At the same moment, Fuki stood up with some difficulty. Her sight was blurry, and she heard an annoying buzzing in her ears. Her black dress was torn until it was just covering part of her chest, showing her wounded legs in her rear. Both of her legs were covered by blood and scratches, some lighter than others. At the center of her chest was a huge wound present. It was oozing blood and caused Fuki to short of breath. Aside a few scratches, a few droplets of dry blood, she was not wounded in her face. She walked towards she witnessed Ye coming out of the crater. As soon as she saw her, her smirked, this time not mocking her. Okay, I'll swallow my words back. You are strong, quite strong, Fuki said with some difficulty, not showing any weaknesses. I can say the same to you, Ye replied, while ignoring the pain in her body. They looked at each other for some time. They smiled respect present in their eyes. Fuki then said, welcome to the team. She decided to swallow the loss. Either way, she was closest to Issei right now. She was just wary of her. Ye widened her eyes. She never expected this. Thanks, she smiled. Both of them walked closer just until the arm's length away. The smiles on their faces were still there, and newfound respect was inside their eyes. It doesn't matter if I lose. I'm still ahead of everyone, Fuki smirked, caused Ye to feel a sense of defeat. She was silent and couldn't refute her words, but then she asked, you decided to fight me not because of my strength, but rather to test my heart, Ye said, while feeling her consciousness fade. Yes, she agreed. Issei had suffered a lot. I do not know how or know what caused it, but I only wish for it not to happen again. I'll do my best to keep harmful people away from him, especially women, Fuki answered. I don't know what he experienced, nor what he's changed so much, but I won't let anything hurt him. In testing you as a way to see how you actually were, a fight shows the heart of the people, and it was necessary for it to be done, Fuki finished explaining. You tested my resolve of being with him, and you were even willing to experience it with your own body, just to see how I was, Ye asked? Yes, if it's for him, I'll do it as many times as I can. He's my reason for being here, after all. Ye was amazed at the resolve of the woman. She was silent, only staring at the woman. Soon she reached the conclusion. Fire filled her eyes, and Fuki saw this. I will be the same as you, she muttered while clenching her fist. I will be someone precious to Issei-san. I'll stand by his side at all the moments, even if the entire world is against us. I, Ye Ruta, last of the moon rabbits and daughter of Shiva, swear to be at his side until the end. Her pride, as a moon rabbit, was seen here. Fuki was amazed by this. Seems her decision was not wrong, but her thoughts were stopped when she heard some words. Also, not because you're the first doesn't mean that there's no hope, she smiled. I'll show you all that my feelings for him are extremely strong and unwavering. I will become his woman. Her face reddened at those words. Fuki was angered by this. Her face was red from anger. I was wrong. You're definitely a threat. I won't let you do as you please, Fuki said, while Ye smiled. After the fight, Parvati was nice enough to heal both of them. Their fight was incredible, but they still broke the rules, so Issei was extremely angered at them. As the two were on the ground, barely conscious, Issei was looking at them with his eyes that promised some kind of punishment. Erika was at his side, also looking a bit angered. Shiva was looking at Ye and at Issei, alternating between each other. She saw how her daughter's face changed from red to blue due to the eyes of Issei. Her eyes were down, and when she tried to smile, Issei narrowed his eyes, causing her ears to twitch. Ha! Fuki mocked Ye. Issei then looked at her, causing her to flinch and turn her head away. Ye saw this and revealed a mocking grin on her face. Issei then looked at her once again, causing her smile to freeze. Issei sighed and managed to bridge of his nose. Okay, I don't know why you took it too far, but I'm going to be honest. He opened his eyes and looked at them. You won't do it again, understand? His smile caused them to feel chills. Nod, nod. Both of them nodded their heads immediately. Issei watched them and nodded his head once. Then his eyes softened a bit, and he began talking with warm and sharp voice. Since no one has a problem with Ye joining us, I'll say where we get going next. His words caught the attention of all of his team. Erika stood at his side and then looked at him. Her eyes were sheaming with expectations. Ye and Fuki also stared at him. His natural air gave his charisma and decisiveness. Both of them eyes held a dreamy look. Soon they were both lost in his eyes. We're going to Germany. There's a place I need to go because of certain reasons, he said, while looking at the three of them. Verdi was still healing the pair of women, her face full of smiles. She knew why they were going. Why there, Issei? Erika asked while looking at him. He was silent. His silence caused Erika to narrow her eyes. Even Fuki and Ye knew something was amiss. Sighing, Issei decided to answer the question. I need information about a certain medicine. His words caused all the girls to widen their eyes. Medicine? For what? For my lifespan. His words caused the woman to widen their eyes. Issei, what do you mean by that? Erika acted out of character and yelled at him. Her face was filled with anger and worry. Issei-san, are you going to be okay? You can't leave Ye alone, understand? Issei, what happened? How did it happen? Fuki was extremely anxious. Do not worry. It's not much to worry about, he decided to lie. He knew that later on this was going to bite him in the ass. Erika crossed her arms under her chest and said, Explain now. Remember the goddess? He decided to laugh the truth more or less. They two nodded their heads and just tilted her. She didn't quite understand. Well, remember how we dealt the final blow and got out of there, he asked once again. Then he nodded his head. Issei, where are you getting? Erika said, but soon widened her eyes, recalled something. Issei noticed this inside. Seems you figured it out. He lifted the corner of his mouth. As a last resort, To deal with the final blow to the goddess, I used my lifespan as a source of energy, so you could say that I lost a bit of it. Also, the last portal that we used to escape consumed a fair share of my lifespan, so according to Drake, I need to treasure, which helps me recover the lost life force. He lied through his teeth. They're going to beat me up when they know the truth, he thought. Indeed, Drake agreed to his words. His words caused Ye to widen her eyes. She was shocked. She felt how her body recovered most of her strength, so she stood up and went towards him. And why would you keep this from us until now? Ye yelled while standing on the tip of her toes. Because it's nothing much. You'll just worry for nothing, Issei shrugged his shoulders. You're lying. You're definitely lying, Erika said while moving her arms erratically. You probably thought it was too troublesome, right? Fuki commented while pouting. Then surprised Issei, but he agreed. He nodded his head. You know me well. You idiot, she said while pulling a paper fan out of nowhere and hitting him in his head, her eyes unscathed tears. Anyway, we need to go to an alchemy guild. They should have some information about medicines and treasures from heavens and earth while can affect dragons, he said, ignoring the pouting. I see, Erika nodded her head, understanding what he meant. That's what you've been reading, all about alchemy, Fukia said. Indeed, he agreed once again. His plan was going better than he thought. You see, us dragons use masses of pure energy, and such only the strongest and rare medicines can affect us. He explained, making everyone understand. Even more if the dragon has awoken his aura, so it should be pretty tough to find a treasure like that. But according to Drake, a treasure of that level hasn't been born in quite some time. So I have literally nothing to worry about. She placed his hands inside of his pockets. While the woman assimilated the information, Parvati finished healing Fuki and stood up. She walked and reached her husband's side. Erika then decided to ask something. How much did you lose? Issei sighed, but he decided to still continue his plan. Seems like I'll lie about this too. Anyway, it's better. I don't want them to worry too much. I lost 1,000 years, he said. His words caused the three men to widen their eyes, shocked definitely present. 1,000? They yelled at him at the same time, not believing his words. Yes, but according to Drake, dragons live for more than 10,000 years, so it's nothing to worry about. He tried to calm them down. Erika was about to yell at him, saying how could it be nothing, but she stopped herself. Issei was always like this and she knew it. Ye was at his side, her eyes open to the max. She was scared at his revelation. Fuki stood up and walked closer to Issei. She grabbed his arm and looked into his eyes. She was worried about this, really anxious as well. Issei saw her reaction and smiled a bit. She moved his hand on her head and gave her a quick pat. He felt bad about lying, but it was needed for now. Later on, he will pay for it. Ugh, the beating I'll receive, he thought. At the same moment, Ye walked closer to him. She stood in front of him while blushing, and she hugged him, clearly trying to console him. Issei was startled by this, but smiled. His eyes became soft and warm, an expression only reserved for this most trusted ones. Thanks, he said with a gentle voice, something rare in him. The women were amazed by this, but all of them gifted beautiful smiles. Yes, Ye closed her eyes and smiled while feeling touched. Her smile was similar to a goddess, warming his heart. Issei, Fuki smiled a fastidious way, but also an air of happiness. Her eyes were shining like a pair of gems. The sound of someone coughing awoke their dreamland. Fuki and Ye were blushing. They stood at the side, fidgeting in their spots. Erika released his hand and looked at the other side. Her face definitely had a blush. Sorry about interrupting the sweet moment, but I want to give you this. Parvati extended her hand, and she held a black box on her hands. Issei tilted his head, but he decided to receive the box. Open it, Parvati insisted. Issei only nodded his head. He opened the black box, and inside it were two things present. Bracelets? Issei said while looking at the pair of metallic breasts inside of the box. Yes, Parvati replied. Those are bracelets that me and my husband had before we were married. They represent our promises to look out for each other and protect each other, Parvati smiled, while recalled the past memories. They mean that we will stay by each other's help and whenever is needed. Parvati was serious. Issei looked at her and Shiva. The first smiled beautifully, the second looked expressions by his eyes seemed to be hoping for something. I'm giving them to you now, Parvati smiled once again. Why? Asked Issei. He knew that these were two artifacts that held too much emotional value for them. Why gifting them? Because we no longer need them. They are for you and Ye as a goodbye gift. Parvati smiled. In a mischievous way, she looked at Ye and smirked. Many engravings were all over the bracelets. All of them were different, but gave the bracelet a sense of beauty that few things can match. At the center, a clear jewel was present. Ye, however, was frozen on her spot. She turned to her mother, was ready to say something, but Parvati winked and her eyes smiled. Ye blushed until she was as red as possible. Her hands fidgeted around, and she was moving from one side to another. Parvati smiled when she saw this. It seemed Ye knew what this meant. Issei-kun, we gave you this as a reminder of your promise with us to yourself, she said, giggling at sight. I see. Issei grabbed the bracelet and placed it around his right wrist. Erika and Fuki looked at it. In a sense, they didn't like it. Their senses were telling them that something was a bit off. Come, Parvati waved at him. Issei walked closer closer to her. Ye was also told the same. The center of the jewel needs to be filled with the aura of each other, she said, but Issei was feeling suspicious. Ye was standing in front of him, her face was all red. This only served a clue of what it meant, but he was forced to stop his thoughts. Anyway, do it. You need to leave, right? Parvati interrupted them. He left his suspicion aside when he saw her eyes staring at him. Issei nodded his head. He extended his hand and touched the jewel in Ye's bracelet. She did the same. Soon, their auras surrounded their bodies. Issei noted this black-colored aura with a red tinge and shining in purple light. Ye was surrounded with a blue aura similar to the moon. However, it was also mixed with reddish color. After some seconds, the clear jewels changed colors and became the same tone as their auras. Ye had a black jewel with red tinge, and on the same center surrounding were shining with dim purple light. Issei, on the other hand, had a light blue jewel with the light red center. Its surroundings had a white aura that reminded him of moonlight. Great! Parvati clapped her hands, seemingly relieved. Shiva nodded his head and lifted the corner of his mouth, happy about this. Ye looked at hers and smiled beautifully. She hugged her bracelet with a gleam in her eyes. Issei looked at the jewel. The same bracelet was satisfied, but suited him rather well. Erika and Fuki all this with confusion. They didn't understand what does this mean, but one of them were sure it wasn't a goodbye gift. With this goodbye, Parvati went and hugged her daughter. She said sad gang goodbye. Shiva went close to Issei and his team and said, "Take care of my daughter. I'll leave you in your care. Also take care of yourself. We don't want you to end up battered and bruised in another faction." He smirked at this. Issei nodded his head. So did Erika and Fuki. Issei extended his hand and went for a handshake. "I promise I'll take good care of her." Shiva completed the handshake. Meanwhile, Parvati whispered something into the ears of Ye. "Don't let him go. We already did what we could. The rest is up to you." Ye blushed at this and looked at her bracelets. Nevertheless, she nodded her head. Parvati hugged her daughter and let go of her. Ye went towards Issei and her father. As she reached them, she gave father the hug. It looked kind of funny considering their height. "Take care, father. Ye will visit you when she has time," she smiled. He nodded his head. "Enjoy your travels, Ye. Also succeed with your goals." He smiled, causing Ye to blush. Issei then said something. "Before I forget, Ye, could you stand over there?" He pointed at an empty patch of land. "Sure." She nodded her head and was told. Issei used his Hellgate and took the 2 articles out. A smartphone and a briefcase. Soon after, a small light scanned Ye, and the 2 minutes passed like another till information appeared on the screen. Name? Unknown. Race? Specific race. Level? High tier, low god. Possible pieces? 8 pawn pieces. Queen piece. 2 rook pieces. 2 knight pieces. Any former mutated whistle. Issei was amazed, and once again by this, as his team filled with monsters. "I know this will be perfect." He decided to use a certain piece, the pair of what he used last time with Erika. He grabbed his mutated rook and placed it on Ye's hand. He then smirked her, causing her to giggle. "Would you, Ye Ruda, become my mutated rook for this battle until victory is achieved?" His voice was deep and serious. They gave him a beautiful smile while nodding her head, said yes. Then a crimson light filled the piece and started to float in front of Ye. After that, it sunk into her chest. The light died down, and Ye was left standing there, a confused look on her face. Issei checked the app. On the other rook position of the photo of Ye appeared. Her information was also there. Issei decided to eliminate the photo like he always does, only leaving her first name with the rest. "Great. With this, you're part of my game officially, Ye," he said. She nodded her head. Confusion she felt was gone. Issei felt everything that needed to be done was already done, so he satisfied everything until now, turning around and looked at Fuki. Issei then said, "Use it." Fuki nodded her head and prepared herself for leaving. Breaking the boundary between worlds, Yakuza no Magatama. Transfer. On her wrist was a bracelet with several Magatamas expanded. The Yakuza no Magatama successfully activated. "Well, it's time to go. Thanks for everything, Parvati-san. Shiva, son, we'll take our leave." Issei decided to add suffixes since he felt it was needed, at least for them. They noticed this and smiled. It seems the dragon finally opened up to them. "Yay, let's go. We have things to do, and a tournament is a month and a half away," Issei said while looking at Ye. "Yes," she smiled and walked closer to him. She stood at his side. Fuki saw this and walked near Issei, grabbing his arm. She basically took it off Ye. Ye stood there and watched the fox take him, her eyes open in shock. That problematic fox," she yelled while fuming, walking towards the pole, their anger in her face. Erika was left for last. She smirked as she thought about her own plans. This will certainly be interesting. She walked towards the portal while thinking on those 2 fights she could reap the spoils of war. As she crossed the portal, it started to decrease inside until it vanished, leaving only Shiva and Parvati. They still stood less than a minute looking towards the palace, and their daughter went through. "Whew," Parvati giggled. Were the bracelets necessary? He asked his wife and turned his head, looked at him. We just gave her a little push. She grabbed his arm and rested her cheek on top of his head. Besides, wasn't it you who wished for this? You've been talking to me about the Sekiro ever since the war against the beast ended. Shouldn't the father be the one that doesn't want his daughter to go with a man? She teased him. Shiva sighed at the comment of his wife. It was needed. She had been alone for more than 200 years, only training and sparring. Walking around Mount Kalash in the exterior, she has only been to the human world not more than twice. It was something that was needed, he said. Ye needs to go outside. So my plan was for the Sekiro to ask for a hand. Never would I ever thought that the proud moon rabbit, our daughter, would fall for him, he sighed. Shiva sighed, and again, and the moon rabbits only love once in their life. This was just like the work of fate. Parvati giggled even more. He charmed our daughter the moment she first laid eyes on him. Quite nostalgic, right? She teased once again. He was silent, neither angering nor refuting. Anyway, the bracelet was just a safety measure. By our costumes there together. What's left is for Ye to finally conquer his heart, Shiva said, while walking towards the main door, his wife at his side. Indeed, she will succeed, and that I'm sure of. She's my daughter, after all, Parvati smiled quietly. Yes, she will succeed. She's stubborn as you and as careful as me. She will need time, although she could be said to be the Drake. I don't know what happened to him, but it was something bad. I knew it since the moment I saw him. After it felt a bit odd when I saw him. Rhodey removed her teasing face and stated sensibly, Shiva nodded his head. Whatever it was, it broke him. He remembered their talk a few days ago. The trust I had was destroyed. Not a piece of it remains till this day. Believe me, Shiva, trust takes a long time to form and seconds to break. And when it breaks, it leads to betrayal. His words were something that still remembers. And betrayal is something that never comes from your enemies. He narrowed his eyes at this. He had many guesses, but unless Issei Hyodo came and answered his questions, they will remain as they are. Guesses. Parvati saw this serious glint in his eyes of her husband, and she was also curious about it. What exactly happened to you, Issei-kun, to say such words? I hope this is nothing too bad, she thought. Shiva had different ideas. Unknowingly, he had a lot of political power. The Norse adores him, and the Greeks respect him due to his achievements. For the three biblical factions, he's basically the pillar of support. He kept walking towards the door, and now after what happened, he had the backing of the entire Hindu pantheon. If he asks for my help, I will go. My sons as well. And my army respects him a bit too much. If they discover what his social standing is right now, then his position will rise by a big margin, he thought. For the first time, he opened inside. His wife stared at him a bit surprised. Only time will tell, he declared. Leave this for another time, Parvati understood him and declared the same. Soon they left the field inside Mount Kalash. The sound of footsteps echoed inside the empty field. What would exactly happen after all of this? That's a question that the god of destruction kept asking himself, and that is the end of Chapter 10. Bond Usins, an unknown.